That's not a problem. It just won't take as long. So, do you want to do that? And then maybe we could have more conversation.
Let's try that.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. And in the meantime, uh, there are a couple of our staff that are online, and maybe they can continue to work on the issue.
They would
And
have
at
to
one point, it
find
might
it
appear.
in your,
So in the meantime,
Rob, they'd have to find it.
welcome
They'd
to.
have to find it. Can you hear me? If we're going to do this, they're going to have to find it in your email, probably your junk folder. Can you hear me?
Right, the link.
No?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little off and on, but I can't hear you.
Well, how's that going to be if I speak
So
at all?
we'll try that. We'll start without the visuals and sorry.
I'm just a little worried that you won't be able to hear me even now, since it's difficult for you.
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Um, I can hear you.
And can you see me?
So welcome, folks. I can see you fine,
All right.
and so we've got sound and video. So welcome everyone, and thank you for your patience as we've tried to work out a couple of things. We're just delighted to have Mark Wheatley with us for this webinar. We thought it was a real coup to get her to uh, do this, and in some ways, I can mark my own ministry through various books that Meg has published. Uh, her first book, Leadership in the New Science, formed kind of a basis for my DMin work and Conversations That Matter and the whole Wonder Cafe uh, process have shaped our general counsel work. And now this newest book uh, is just for those that, well, I'll just read something that Meg wrote about it. I wrote this book for you if you offer your work as a contribution to others, whatever your work might be. And if now you find yourself feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and despairing, uh, no need to raise your hands, while also experiencing moments of joy, belonging, and increased resolve to do your work. This book describes how we can do our good work with dedication, energy, discipline, and joy by consciously choosing a new role for ourselves, that of warriors for the human spirit. A wonderful introduction, and leaves me kind of very excited to hear what you have to share with us and engage us in conversation with tonight. So welcome, Mark Wheatley. Mark, I'm just going to turn off my own uh, uh, visual here, and if you want me to come back at one point.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Okay. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for your patience. But patience is a synonym for perseverance. So it's relevant to what I'm going to be saying. I realized that when Rob read that description that I've used a very similar introduction to two of my books, and the second one was Perseverance, which is meant as a day-to-day guide for those of us who are trying to do good work and are trying to stay engaged and not be taken down by illness, exhaustion, frustration, despair, grief, a lot of very dark emotions. And the basic question that I'm holding for all of us, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation, is who do we choose to be for this time? It is not a trivial time, it is not a normal time, uh, and how we both take in the truthfulness of what's happening and how we then choose a role for ourselves is, for me, the most important uh, questions and perspectives I can raise. So those are the ones I want to raise tonight. I go around speaking now and talking about a number of very dark dynamics, societal, global influences, not just in the US, but globally, that are really impacting our ability to do good work and are impacting our levels of fatigue and stress and exhaustion and are impacting our whole attitude about whether this is even worth the struggle. So I have a rather, sometimes it seems like a rather perverse way of approaching this, but it's based on a quote from one of my Buddhist teachers, Chogyam Trungpa, who is the founder of Shambhala, who said that we cannot change the way the world is. We just can't. But by opening to the world as it is, we may discover that gentleness, decency, and bravery are available not only to us, but to all human beings. So for me, that was a path that if I'm willing to really confront the level of suffering and tragedy and disrespect and inhumane behavior, life destroying policies, if I'm really willing to encounter that fully, knowing that I can't change it. So there's a value of surrender there. These are all very deep spiritual concepts that I'm raising here. If we open to what is with an acceptance and a surrender, where it leads us is not to withdrawal, but to discovering the very capacities we need to be of service to this time. So we discover gentleness or non aggression, decency, we're trustworthy, our word means something, we have moral judgment, we have morality, gentleness, decency, and bravery. So it seems paradoxical. Many people are fleeing from this time, many people are withdrawing. Um, Many people that I know are of retirement age are grateful that they're just getting out of the mess. They've done their bit. They feel frustrated. They're retiring early, even. But who do we choose to be, for me, is the pivotal question. Once we truthfully face what's going on, then we have a choice. And there are several actions besides early retirement that are available to us. Some people get angry and get overcome by anger. Some people work harder. Some people say, what's the use, and just withdraw. Some people act very cynically and become quite bitter. Some people just stay in the fog of, well, what's going on here? I don't understand any of it. Um, so there are many different roles we can choose, from getting more active, working harder and exhausting ourselves, to at the opposite extreme, actually just withdrawing and leading a good life. Now, for people of faith, I think this is an even deeper question. That's why I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to all of you. Um, what is the faith we rely on, have relied on? What is the faith we need to be in this work? And who is the God we serve? Who is the divine? What is the sacred here? And does that give meaning and purpose to our choices? I'm working with the Catholic nuns of America who are under siege by the Vatican, who just wants them to become obedient women again and just subscribe to doctrine. It may be easing up with the new pope, but it's been horrific. Um, the amount of disrespect and oppression and abuse that they have suffered at the hands of the old pope and his archbishops. But in all of this, they've realized that it is their faith that is giving them strength. And they've introduced a concept that I really love and want to offer to you, which is they are trying to serve the God of the future, not the God of the past, but the God of the future. So They feel they are responding to a call from perhaps a divinity they're just getting to know, but whose spirit is strengthening them and their emerging clarity that they will never stop serving the downtrodden of the world, the poor of the world, the women and children of the world. I just see a kind of strength arising in them that is really very unique and very important to notice. So, who is the God that we are serving, and what is the level of faith we have to to move us forward, so we can make a decision about who we choose to be? Now, who we choose to be, for me, one of the things that's not on that list is becoming a martyr. I meet
Folks. We seem to have lost Mark for a second, and hopefully she will log back on momentarily. Um, Not sure whether there's some difficulties with the internet.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right, I'm going to start sharing the screen again.
Very good.
So I don't know why the internet is dropping, but I am reaching you from Ecuador. So that may or may not be a factor. There's been great
Oh, really?
internet here, so I'm not sure about that. So let me continue about speaking about those who are already in uh, roles of service. The thing that we need to notice is the problems that we're encountering, the people that we're trying to serve, the causes that we're involved with are not going to diminish in the next many years. And so, one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, can I continue at this level of involvement? Um, and the answer usually is no. So then we get into the question of, how do we persevere for the long term? How do we uh, maintain ourselves and maintain our strength so that we can be in this for a good long time, with the realization that it's not going to get easier? So I think for people of faith, again, this is a very important challenge to us. Uh, Now, the first thing to notice about people who persevere is we all have them in our ancestors, in our lineages. None of us are here because somebody gave up. We're all here because people persevered on our behalf. And my own Buddhist teacher says, it's just our turn to serve the world. It's no big deal. In fact, we have better conditions now. We're not working with drought, famine, war. We live in comfort. And perhaps that's a challenge to us. But to realize that we have to use the conditions, the good, favorable conditions of our lives right now, in order to determine how we can stay for the long term. For me, these are critical issues. So, some of the things we have to be aware of when we're trying to stay for the long term is that we have to notice what brings us down, what robs our energy. It's the first thing. Usually, that's very strong emotions that rob our energy, things like grief and anger and outrage. There's more than enough cause for outrage and grief for what's going on in the world. Um, but how do we work with those strong emotions and not let them define us, not let them rob us of essential energy. The second big thing for persevering is we have to know when to give up. We have to know when the conditions just aren't right for us to keep pushing an issue, when we don't have enough allies, when we don't have enough health, when we don't have enough energy, or when we're just realizing that we're behaving like Sisyphus. In that old Greek and Roman myth, Sisyphus was punished by the gods of always having to roll a rock up a hill and then watching as it rolled right back down. Now, for me, if Sisyphus wasn't cursed and had the ability to apply a little intelligence here, what he would have discovered quite quickly is that this isn't working. But we're not punished by gods, although sometimes it does feel like that these days. But we can notice whether we're just pushing, pushing, pushing against a mountain. And it's time to back off. It's time to withdraw. It's time to regroup. Um, so that's also a very important dimension of perseverance. It never means just barreling through and just putting more energy into something that clearly isn't working. And another concern of perseverance and people who are able to persevere is how we deal with the level of criticism, judgment, um, outright slander, and verbal abuse that's in the culture right now. This is a time of extraordinary anger and very violent language, and people feel free to say anything they want. And this is very difficult. So there is a way in which we have to protect ourselves from being open to that level of criticism, judgment. That's the first part. But the second part is we have to watch our own mouths. How quick are we to judge? How quick are we to criticize? And I have to say, in many spiritual organizations that I've worked in, the level of instant judgment and criticism is appalling. It's like we don't give each other any slack whatsoever. And this is something we just have.
Clearly, Marg is having some internet issues from Ecuador. She will come back in. Was certainly resonating with her description of both the voices of critique and the sense of pushing a rock up a hill that keeps falling or rolling back down. Yeah, good point, Michael. And I expect Mark will log back on momentarily. What we will do is try to get a clean recording of the presentation and make it available as we do with the other webinars for those of you that have joined us tonight. But hopefully Mark will be back on in just a second here. In the meantime, do take advantage of the, take advantage of the chat pod that is on the bottom left of your screen. And if you want to ask Mark particular questions, there she is. I'll just here. If you want to ask Mark particular questions, then I'll watch the chat pod, and maybe in a few minutes we can pause and address some of those.
Here I am. I have to tell you what's really strange is the internet doesn't drop on both computers, it's just on one. So, persecution. and challenge. So I just want to stress this last part about taking responsibility for how we are together as a community of faith. If we could really understand that we're all in this together, we're all going through experiences that are very difficult, very troubling, very challenging. Um, and there is just no more space for the former luxury of being able to just sit back and wait, or being able to sit back and just criticize each other. And the only reason I'm stressing this is because the highest levels of criticism and judgment that I've experienced have been in some spiritual, religious, or church organizations. And that's not what we're about. We're about finding ways to serve, finding ways to embody our spiritual values, finding ways to work, I would hope, for this God of the future, whoever or whatever that might mean to you. And taking care together that we can withstand the pressures and these very negative dynamics that are out there. I describe this culture now as like a great centrifuge extractor. Now, a great centrifugal force is when you whirl and whirl and whirl and things fly off. And a centrifuge extractor is designed to take what was formerly together, a solution, and by speeding things up, whirling at high speed, all, all this, all the solution becomes separate, and the separate elements go their own way. For me, the impact of speed and fear and aggression in this global culture of ours. Um, has really whirling us away from one another and into our separations in a way that is exactly the wrong direction. I mean, I've said it already, but I'll say it again that humans get through anything when we're together. So the great loss here,
I've
the
seen a
great
couple of
tragedy
questions
is
come
that
up
if we can't
already on the
operate as a
screen that are
community of faith,
very relevant to what you were saying.
or as a
One of the
community of
questions
neighbors,
was,
um,
how,
we're
how do
not
we
going to
deal with our
survive.
own
So it's
rage
just
or
that clear to me.
outrage about the
And so
injustice
the
that we do
separation
experience,
is something
even
that
as
we
leaders in the
can
church, where we're trying to
intentionally,
cultivate
consciously,
communities
and
of
very
compassion
importantly,
and peace?
counteract by our actions. And some of those actions are avoiding, noticing when we're leaping to judgment, notice when we're leaping to stereotypes and criticism, and just go away and shut up for a while is my approach to myself. When I start to get really bitchy towards other people and really just noticing everything that's wrong with them, I know enough about myself now to know, okay, I better withdraw from the scene because I'm not being helpful. Can I just go off for a few minutes and quiet myself or meditate or pray? Because I know that my quick judgments are not useful. In fact, they're quite destructive. Now, that's a personal commitment, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. But I must say, I'm a nicer person to be. Actually, repetition helps. Now I know exactly which button to press. Yes,
I,
yes.
I've
And
dropped off
and the one big
for
difference is I'm no
a bit.
longer cursing when this happens. I just
Um, Hopefully she will come back. So, and thank you for your questions.
can I give you the quote from Pema Chodron about anger? Can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, let's be less evaluative,
Yes,
judgmental,
you can hear me.
diagnostic, more compassionate in our
So
communication.
Pema Chodron said that anger is like eating rat poison and expecting it to kill the rat. So anger doesn't serve us. And so what it does is it creates a kind of energy drain
So I
that
can hear you
really,
already,
in many people,
Meg,
destroys
and
their
welcome
health.
back again
And
from
so
Ecuador. You've
that's
made the
the
trip a
reason you
number of
have
times
to,
now.
I think the process is you feel angry, but then you calm
So
yourself
carry on.
down and then you decide what to
So
do. It's a
another
very
question.
simple
Someone
process.
was
But these days I find that I'm challenged by anger more and
someone
more.
was
So then the practice has to become
Thank you.
stronger. Okay, another question?
Yes, yes, please go. Yeah.
Yeah, I will repeat the Pema quote, which is she said that anger is like eating rat poison, and then uh, believing that will kill the rat. So it's a self-destructive emotion. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Um, Thank you, Meg. Louise is sure. Louise is uh, wanting uh, other specific things around practices, especially around anger, and also just as I said, yes, we can hear you. There was a bit of a gap, and if you could just repeat the quote from that you just.
Well, I think there are a lot of practices, but I think there first has to be a commitment to want to not be be angry. And again, I'm speaking personally. I mean, so many of us are motivated by anger.
To die.
And we think that getting rid of the anger will get rid of the energy.
So,
Do the work.
Scott was saying
So there
that
really has to be an understanding.
he was
That
thinking
anger
spirituality is a way of
energy drain
dealing with some of our
emotion.
experience.
To us.
When we're experiencing
As we do
holy
the
when
work.
we're not. Are there other, and
So the Ignatian
the quote that
spirituality
you offered,
I
and just a simple
love. I have
awareness of anger
several
you've
friends
already
who
mentioned. Are
teach
there
it, and I
other
have deep
practices that
respect for that. I think
leaders in
any
ministry in
kind
particular might
of
turn to?
practice that you can pick up where you learn to notice when you get angry, not the cause, not the source of the anger, but simply being able to spot when you've just lost it. You're sitting in a meeting or you're with your partner or with a child, and you notice, you just don't get carried away by anger. You notice more quickly. And then a very simple practice is to just pause, just stop. Now, I talked about my own practice of withdrawing to a quiet corner when I'm in excessive judgment. But another practice that I've done personally is if I'm in a meeting and I notice I'm starting to get really angry, I sit back and I shut up. Um, but just pausing for the count of three can often, and sometimes putting in a quick prayer, um, Lord help me here. I found that very useful. And but the first thing is you have to give up wanting to feel that anger is useful. That's where I think the real distinction has to be made. It's easier to be angry and it feels righteous and good. It has a lot of heat to it. So the question is not using that heat, but simply using the moment to step back so you can see clearly. And then you find you still have the energy, but you don't have the blasting aggression that is so destructive. Yes. Yes.